My husband spent the entire New Year's Eve on his cell phone. At midnight, he left the room just as everyone was celebrating. When I followed him, he was handing something to a stranger. The man looked at me and said, "She doesn't know yet, does she? Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and comment where you're watching from." The champagne sat untouched in my glass as midnight approached, condensation sliding down the crystal like tears I refused to shed. Around me, our living room buzzed with the forced gaiety of another New Year's Eve gathering. Our daughter Melissa and her husband Brad occupied the sofa. Their twin teenagers sprawled on the floor with their phones, and our son Christopher stood by the fireplace checking his watch every few minutes as though he had somewhere better to be. But it was my husband, Richard, who commanded my attention without even trying. For the past 3 hours, he'd been glued to his phone, typing frantically, his face illuminated by the cold blue glow of the screen. 70 years old, and he'd suddenly discovered texting with the fervor of a teenager. "Dad, you're going to miss the countdown," Melissa called out, her voice tight with that particular brand of irritation reserved for parents who embarrass their grown children. Richard barely glanced up. "Just handling something important," he muttered, his fingers never stopping their dance across the screen. I'd been married to this man for 46 years. I knew his tells, the way his left eyebrow twitched when he lied about working late, the slight clearing of his throat before he delivered bad news, the absent-minded way he touched his wedding ring when he felt guilty about something. And tonight, he was doing all three. 10, 9, 8. The room erupted in the ritualistic countdown. I watched Richard's face as the numbers descended, his jaw clenched tighter with each second. When 7 echoed through the room, his phone buzzed. He read the message, and something shifted in his expression, relief mixed with dread, if such a combination were possible. 3, 2, 1! Happy New Year! Melissa pulled Brad into a kiss. Christopher raised his glass half-heartedly. The teenagers barely looked up from their devices, and Richard stood abruptly, phone in hand, and walked straight out of the living room. No Happy New Year to his wife. No kiss at midnight, not even eye contact. I gave him 30 seconds. Then I followed. The January cold hit me the moment I opened the front door. Our property in rural Vermont spreads across 12 acres of forest and meadow, and the main house sits a good 100 yards from the road. Richard stood near the end of our driveway, illuminated by the security light we'd installed after a string of package thefts in the area. He wasn't alone. A man I'd never seen before stood facing him, tall, perhaps in his 50s, wearing an expensive wool coat that looked out of place in our rural setting. Richard pulled an envelope from his inner jacket pocket and handed it over. The transaction was swift, practiced, like they'd done this before. The stranger opened the envelope, rifled through what looked like papers or perhaps cash, and nodded. That's when he looked up and saw me standing on the porch. "She doesn't know yet, does she?" His voice carried clearly across the frozen ground. Richard spun around, and in that moment, I saw my husband of 46 years transformed into someone I didn't recognize. Fear, guilt, and something else. Calculation. He was already planning his explanation. I could see it happening in real time. "Ingrid, go back inside," he said, his voice sharp in a way it hadn't been in years. "This doesn't concern you." The stranger laughed, a short, bitter sound. "Doesn't concern her? That's rich, Richard. Really rich." "Who are you?" I called out, stepping off the porch despite Richard's outstretched hand warning me back. "What's in that envelope?" The man looked at Richard, then back at me. For a moment, I thought he might answer. Instead, he tucked the envelope inside his coat, turned, and walked toward a dark sedan parked just beyond our property line. Its engine was running. He'd been planning a quick getaway. "Richard!" I marched down the driveway, my house slippers crunching on the frozen gravel. "What is going on?" My husband stood there, suddenly looking every one of his 70 years. "We'll talk about this tomorrow, Ingrid. Not now, not here. We'll talk about it now." I planted myself in front of him, arms crossed despite the cold seeping through my cardigan. "Who was that man? What did you give him? You need to trust me." His eyes wouldn't meet mine. "Please, go back inside before the kids notice you're gone." But it was too late for that. Through the window, I could see Melissa's silhouette moving toward the door, probably wondering where her parents had disappeared to during the celebration. Richard saw her too. Fine. Tomorrow morning. I promise we'll talk. But Ingrid, his hand gripped my arm, not painfully but firmly. Don't mention this to anyone. Not Melissa, not Christopher. No one. Do you understand? I pulled my arm free. I don't understand anything. And I don't make promises to keep secrets when I don't know what I'm protecting. The front door opened, spilling warmth and the sounds of a televised ball drop into the night. Mom? Dad? What are you doing out here? Melissa stood framed in the doorway, confusion etched on her face. Your father forgot something in the car, I heard myself say, the lie emerging smooth and practiced. When had I learned to lie so easily? Richard squeezed my hand. Whether in gratitude or warning, I couldn't tell. Just getting Ingrid's phone. She left it in the glove compartment. We walked back to the house together, presenting a united front to our daughter. But the space between us felt vast as an ocean. Behind us, the sedan's taillights disappeared down the dark country road, taking with it whatever answers that envelope had contained. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of forced smiles and mechanical conversations. I helped Melissa clean up the appetizer plates. I hugged Christopher and his teenagers goodbye, noting how they couldn't wait to leave our boring house for whatever party they were really supposed to be at. I waved from the porch as cars pulled away, one by one, until only Richard and I remained. He went straight to his study and locked the door. I stood in the hallway, listening to the muffled sounds of drawers opening and closing, papers shuffling, and at one point, what sounded like a small sob quickly stifled. My husband was crying in his locked study at 1 a.m. on New Year's Day, and I had no idea why. Sleep was impossible. At 3 a.m., I gave up trying and went down to the kitchen to make tea. That's when I noticed the light still on in Richard's study. The door remained locked, but a thin strip of yellow light persisted underneath. By 5 a.m., I'd consumed 4 cups of chamomile and made a decision. Whatever Richard was hiding, I was going to find it. Not by asking. He'd already made it clear he had no intention of telling me the truth. No, I would have to discover it myself. The thought should have frightened me. After 46 years of marriage, of trust, of building a life together, here I was planning to spy on my own husband. But fear had given way to something else during those long, dark hours. Determination. I knew Richard's patterns. Monday through Friday, he left for his consulting work at 8:30. The man was nothing if not punctual. That gave me 8.5 hours to search the house for whatever he was hiding. But first, I needed to appear normal, unsuspecting. I needed him to believe I'd accepted his promise of, "We'll talk tomorrow," and moved on. At 6:30, I started breakfast. Pancakes, his favorite. Coffee, exactly the way he liked it. When he emerged from his study at 7, hollow-eyed and rumpled, I greeted him with a kiss on the cheek and a smile. "You look exhausted," I said, sliding a plate in front of him. "Rough night?" He blinked at me, clearly surprised by my calm demeanor. Yes, couldn't sleep. Ingrid, about last night? You promised we'd talk. And we will, when you're ready." I poured his coffee, added exactly half a teaspoon of sugar. "But maybe after you've had some rest? You look like you've been up all night." Relief flooded his face. "Thank you. Yes. I just need a few days to sort some things out, and then I'll explain everything, I promise." A few days. He thought he had a few days to cover his tracks, to spin whatever story he'd concocted. He was wrong. "Take your time," I said sweetly. "I'm not going anywhere." He left for work at 8:32, 2 minutes behind schedule. I watched from the kitchen window as his car disappeared down the driveway. Then I set my teacup down with shaking hands. The study was my first target. Richard kept a spare key hidden in the hallway closet, tucked inside an old boot we'd brought back from a hiking trip in Colorado 15 years ago. He didn't know I knew about it, but after 4 decades of marriage, very little escaped my notice. The lock clicked open smoothly. I pushed the door wide and stepped into my husband's private domain, a room I'd respected as his sanctuary for years, rarely entering uninvited. Now I understood why. Papers covered every surface. Bank statements, legal documents, printouts of emails. But it was the photographs scattered across his desk that made my blood run cold. They showed our house, multiple angles, different times of day, some taken from the road, others from deep in the woods that bordered our property. Professional surveillance photos, with timestamps in the corners. Someone had been watching us, and Richard knew about it. My hands trembled as I picked up a document half hidden beneath the photos. It was a property deed for our house, the 12 acres we'd owned for 30 years. But this wasn't our original deed. This one was dated 3 weeks ago, and it listed only one name as owner, Richard Samuel Hollister. Not Ingrid and Richard Hollister, as it had been for decades. Just Richard. He'd somehow transferred the property into his name alone, without my signature, without my knowledge. That's when I heard it. The crunch of tires on gravel. A car was coming up the driveway. I shoved everything back where I'd found it as best I could, my heart hammering. Richard wasn't due back until 6. Had he forgotten something? Doubled back to make sure I wasn't snooping? I locked the study door and returned the key to its hiding place in under 30 seconds, then positioned myself at the kitchen sink, hands soapy with dishwater, by the time the doorbell rang. Through the front window, I could see a silver Toyota I didn't recognize. The doorbell rang again, more insistently. I dried my hands and opened the door. A woman in her 40s stood on my porch, professionally dressed in a navy suit despite it being New Year's Day. She held a briefcase and wore an expression I'd seen before on the faces of social workers and hospice nurses. Practiced sympathy mixed with grim determination. "Mrs. Ingrid Hollister?" she asked. "Yes?" She handed me a business card. "My name is Marie Woolsey. I'm an attorney with Hartwell and Associates. I need to speak with you about your property. May I come in?" I looked down at the card, then back at her face. "My property?" "Yes, ma'am. I'm afraid there's been a significant irregularity regarding the deed to your home, and I have reason to believe you may be in danger of losing it." The words seemed to come from very far away. Through the roaring in my ears, I heard myself say, "I think you'd better come in." Marie Woolsey stepped into my home, and as I closed the door behind her, I realized that midnight conversation on the driveway had been just the beginning. The envelope, the stranger, the refiled deed, they were all pieces of a puzzle I didn't even know existed until 12 hours ago. And now an attorney was standing in my kitchen, telling me I might lose my home. "Mrs. Hollister?" Marie said gently. "When was the last time you reviewed the legal documents concerning this property?" I opened my mouth to answer, then realized I had no idea. Richard handled all of that. He'd always handled it. "How long have you been married, Mrs. Hollister?" 46 years. She nodded slowly, as if I'd just confirmed something she already knew. "And in all that time, did you ever give your husband power of attorney over your assets?" "No, never. We own everything jointly." Marie opened her briefcase and pulled out a document. "I'm afraid that's not what this says." The paper she handed me was a power of attorney form, dated 8 months ago. My signature appeared at the bottom, clear as day. Witnessed and notarized. But I had never signed it. I stared at my own forged signature, and the room began to tilt. Someone, my husband of 46 years, had been planning this for months, and I had no idea what this even was. I must have gone pale, because Marie Woolsey guided me to a chair with the practiced efficiency of someone accustomed to delivering devastating news. "Mrs. Hollister, I need you to look at this document very carefully. Is that your signature?" My hand trembled as I held the paper closer. The signature was perfect. The slight leftward slant of the E, the way my L connected to the rest of my last name, even the little flourish at the end that I'd developed after years of signing report cards and permission slips as a schoolteacher. "It looks exactly like my signature," I whispered. "But I never signed this." "I would remember." Marie pulled out a small notebook. "The notary stamp is from Melissa Bradford Associates. Does that name mean anything to you?" My stomach dropped. "Melissa, that's my daughter's name. But her married name is Bradford." "Your daughter is a notary?" "Yes, she works in real estate. But she would never—" I stopped. Would she? Melissa had always been Richard's champion, his defender. When Christopher criticized his father's controlling nature, Melissa shut him down. When I occasionally questioned Richard's financial decisions, she'd remind me that, Dad knows what he's doing. Marie's expression remained neutral, but I could see the calculation behind her eyes. Mrs. Hollister, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest. Has your husband ever suggested you might be experiencing memory problems? The question hit me like a slap. What? No. Why would you ask that? Because, Marie said carefully, in cases of elder financial abuse, it's common for the perpetrator to begin planting seeds of doubt about the victim's cognitive abilities. It provides cover for signatures the victim doesn't remember signing, for decisions they supposedly made but have no recollection of. Elder financial abuse. The words hung in the air between us. My husband isn't abusing me, I said, but my voice lacked conviction. There must be some explanation. Marie leaned forward. Mrs. Hollister, Ingrid, I came here because 3 days ago, I received an anonymous tip that fraudulent documents were being filed regarding this property. Someone wanted me to investigate. Someone who knows what's happening but is afraid to come forward directly. Who? I don't know. The tip came through an encrypted email service, but whoever it was provided me with copies of filed documents, including this power of attorney and the new deed. They also sent me something else. She pulled out another paper. A promissory note. Your husband borrowed $375,000 against this property 6 months ago. The loan comes due in 2 weeks. The room spun. That's impossible. We don't owe anyone money. We paid off our mortgage 15 years ago. Not anymore. According to this, if the loan isn't repaid by January 15th, the lender has the right to foreclose on the property immediately. No grace period, no negotiation. That's highly irregular, but it's legal if both parties agreed to those terms. What lender? A bank? Marie's jaw tightened. That's where it gets interesting. The lender is a private equity firm called Berkshire Development Group. They specialize in acquiring rural properties for commercial development. And their CEO, she paused, watching my face, is named Stephen Sutton. The name meant nothing to me. Should I know him? I don't know. But I ran his photo through a facial recognition search using the security camera footage from the gas station at the end of your road. He was there on New Year's Eve at 11:45 p.m., filling up a dark blue sedan. And according to the timestamp, he drove north immediately after, toward your property. The man on the driveway. The envelope. She doesn't know yet, does she? He was here, I said. At midnight. Richard gave him an envelope. Marie's eyes sharpened. What kind of envelope? I don't know. Papers, maybe cash. They didn't let me get close enough to see. She made a note. Mrs. Hollister, I need to be direct with you. Everything I've found suggests your husband has systematically positioned himself to transfer ownership of this property to himself, borrowed heavily against it, and is now in a situation where he may lose it, or sell it, within 2 weeks. The question is, why? I thought of Richard's haggard face this morning, the locked study, the surveillance photos. I found pictures in his office. Someone's been watching the house. Watching or documenting? What's the difference? Surveillance suggests threat. Documentation suggests preparation for a transaction. If Berkshire Development wants this property, they'd need current photos for their investors, for zoning applications, for environmental assessments. The implications crashed over me. You think Richard is planning to sell our home without telling me? I think, Marie said carefully, that your husband may have gotten himself into a situation he can't escape from. The loan, the restructured ownership, these are the actions of a desperate man. The question is, what made him desperate? Before I could answer, my phone buzzed. A text from Melissa. Mom, Dad just called me. He says you met with a lawyer? What's going on? I stared at the message. How does he know you're here? Marie stood and walked to the window, scanning the tree line. Because someone's still watching. She pulled the curtain closed. Mrs. Hollister, I need you to do something for me. Don't tell your husband we spoke. Don't confront him. Not yet. He's my husband. I can't just... If he's as desperate as I think he is, confronting him could accelerate whatever he's planning. We need time to understand the full scope of this situation. My phone buzzed again. Melissa. Mom, answer me. Dad's really upset. I have to respond, I said. If I don't, she'll come over here. Then tell her you were consulting with an attorney about estate planning. Something benign. Can you do that? I typed with shaking fingers. Just getting some advice on updating our wills. Nothing to worry about. Talk later. The response was immediate. Dad says you need to be careful about who you trust. Some lawyers prey on elderly people. There it was. The subtle suggestion that I was vulnerable, easily manipulated. Elderly. Marie had warned me this would happen. I showed her the text. She nodded grimly. That's gaslighting. Making you question your own judgment. Mrs. Hollister, I know this is overwhelming, but I need you to trust your instincts. Does this situation feel right to you? No, I said quietly. Nothing about this feels right. Then we investigate. Carefully. Marie handed me a small device that looked like a USB drive. This is a digital recorder. Keep it with you. If your husband says anything incriminating, we need documentation. Also, I want you to go through every document you can find in his study. Bank statements, emails, anything that might explain what he needs $375,000 for. You want me to spy on my husband? I want you to protect yourself. There's a difference. She packed her briefcase. I'll be in touch within 48 hours. In the meantime, be careful. Don't let him know you suspect anything. After Marie left, I sat in my kitchen for a long time, staring at the recorder in my palm. 46 years of marriage, reduced to covert recordings and secret investigations. My phone rang. Richard. Ingrid. Melissa called me. What were you doing talking to a lawyer? I forced my voice to remain steady, channeling the calm I'd perfected over 4 decades of teaching middle school students. Just updating our estate plans, Richard. We haven't reviewed them in years. Without consulting me first? His voice had an edge I rarely heard. I thought I'd get some preliminary information. I didn't realize I needed your permission to speak with an attorney. A long pause. What firm? Just someone local. Richard, why does this upset you so much? Another pause. Longer this time. It doesn't upset me. I just think we should make these decisions together. As a couple. The irony was so thick I nearly choked on it. Of course. Together. Like we've always done. Good. Look, I'm coming home early. There are some things we need to discuss. My heart hammered. What things? We'll talk when I get there, around 3 o'clock. He hung up before I could respond. 3 o'clock gave me less than 4 hours. I grabbed the spare key and headed back to Richard's study, the recorder heavy in my pocket. This time, I was methodical. I photographed every document with my phone, uploaded them to a cloud storage account Richard didn't know I had, then carefully returned everything to its original position. The bank statements showed large cash withdrawals over the past 6 months, 20,000 here, 30,000 there, always under the reporting threshold. But it was the emails that made my hands shake. They were from someone named Henry Hollister, my husband's brother. Henry had died 5 years ago in a car accident in Oregon. At least that's what Richard had told me. We'd flown out for the funeral, a small affair with a closed casket. Richard had been devastated, barely spoke for weeks after. But according to these emails, Henry was very much alive, and he was blackmailing Richard. The messages were cryptic, but clear enough. You know what I'll tell her. You know what I'll tell everyone. Send the money or your perfect life ends. She'll leave you. They'll all leave you. 46 years of lies, brother. Think about that. Final payment. $375,000. Then I'm gone forever. You'll never hear from me again. But if you don't pay, I go straight to Ingrid with everything. The dates aligned with the loan, with the property transfer, with everything. Richard had borrowed against our home to pay off his very much alive brother, who was threatening to expose some secret that would end our marriage. But what secret could be worth $375,000? Worth forging documents and selling our home. I heard a car in the driveway. Richard wasn't supposed to be home until 3. It was only 1:30. I shoved my phone in my pocket, locked the study, and barely made it to the kitchen before the front door opened. But it wasn't Richard who walked in. It was Christopher, my son, and he looked furious. "Mom, we need to talk about Dad," he said without preamble. "I got a very interesting call today from someone at Berkshire Development. They wanted to verify that I was aware my parents were selling the family property. They needed me to sign a release waiving any future inheritance claims. My throat went dry. What did you tell them? I told them I had no idea what they were talking about. Then I told them to go to hell. He threw his coat over a chair. Mom, what is Dad doing? Why is some development company calling me about selling this place? I don't know, I said honestly, but I'm trying to find out. Christopher pulled out his phone. They sent me this. He showed me an image of a development plan. Our 12 acres transformed into a luxury resort complex. Berkshire Development has been buying up properties all along this valley for the past 2 years. They're building some kind of ecotourism destination. This place is worth millions to them, but only if they can assemble the full parcel. How much are they offering? That's the thing. The guy said they'd already negotiated the sale, that Dad had accepted their offer and they were just tying up legal loose ends. Christopher's eyes met mine. Mom, did you agree to sell our home? No. Then how is Dad selling it without your consent? Before I could answer, headlights swept across the kitchen window. Richard was home early. Christopher, your father can't know you're here. Why not? Because, I grabbed his arm. Because I need to understand what's happening before we confront him. Please, trust me. My son looked at me for a long moment, and I saw him making a choice. To trust his mother's judgment over his father's authority, perhaps for the first time in his adult life. I'll go out the back, he said. But Mom, I'm not leaving you alone with this. Whatever Dad's done, whatever's happening, I'm on your side. Call me if you need anything. He slipped out the back door just as Richard's key turned in the front lock. My husband walked in carrying a briefcase I'd never seen before, and wearing an expression I couldn't quite read. Fear? Determination? Resignation? Ingrid, he said, setting the briefcase on the kitchen table. We need to talk about our future, and about some decisions I've made to protect us. I looked at the briefcase, at my husband's carefully composed face, and thought about Henry's emails, about the forged power of attorney, about Stephen Sutton and his envelope. Yes, I said calmly. I think it's time we had that conversation. Richard opened the briefcase and pulled out a folder. What I'm about to tell you is going to sound complicated, but I need you to understand that everything I've done has been for us, for our security. He handed me a document. It was a sales contract for our property. Purchase price, $2.3 million. I've accepted Berkshire Development's offer, Richard said. We're going to be rich, Ingrid. We can travel, live anywhere we want. We'll never have to worry about money again. I stared at the contract, at my husband's hopeful, desperate face, and felt something inside me shift and harden. When were you planning to tell me? I asked quietly. I'm telling you now. And Ingrid, his voice dropped, became almost pleading. I need you to sign this. Today. The sale closes in 2 weeks, and if you don't sign, we lose everything. The house, our savings, everything will be destroyed. Why? Because I took out a loan against the property, a big one. And if this sale doesn't go through, the lender could foreclose and we risk losing everything. At least he was admitting that much. Why did you need the money, Richard? His eyes slid away from mine. Bad investments. Some business deals that went south. I thought I could fix it before you found out, but he shook his head. It doesn't matter now. All that matters is that we sign this contract and save ourselves. Every word was a lie. I knew it with absolute certainty. The bad investments, the business deals, none of it was true. But I couldn't let him know I knew. I need time to think about this, I said. We don't have time. Richard's voice rose, sharp and panicked. Ingrid, I'm trying to save us. Why can't you just trust me? I looked at the man I'd spent 46 years with and realized I was looking at a stranger. Because, I said softly, you've given me no reason to. His face went white, then red, then very, very still. I see, he said finally. Well then, I guess we'll just have to do this the hard way. He pulled out his phone, dialed, and spoke without taking his eyes off me. Yes, I need to schedule an emergency evaluation. I'm concerned my wife may be experiencing cognitive decline. She's becoming irrational, paranoid. She needs to be assessed immediately. He hung up and smiled at me. A terrible, sad smile. I'm sorry, Ingrid, but I can't let you destroy everything I've worked to build. The recorder was still in my pocket, capturing every word. And outside, I could see Christopher's car parked just beyond the tree line, watching the house. Richard thought he'd backed me into a corner. He had no idea I'd been teaching strategy to 12-year-olds for 30 years. And I'd just learned something very important. My husband was willing to have me declared incompetent to get what he wanted, which meant whatever secret Henry was holding over him was far worse than I'd imagined. I smiled back at Richard, sweet and guileless. Of course, dear, I said. If you think I need an evaluation, I'll happily go. I have nothing to hide. He blinked, clearly surprised by my compliance. But as I watched him relax slightly, I was already planning my next move. Because while Richard had been making calls, my phone had been recording. And Marie Woolsey was about to get a very interesting audio file. The question was no longer what Richard was hiding. The question was how much time I had before he made his next move. The psychiatric evaluation was scheduled for the following morning at 9 a.m. Richard had moved quickly. Too quickly. He'd called in favors, pulled strings, arranged for Dr. Gerald Winters, a colleague from his consulting firm, to conduct the assessment at our home rather than requiring me to come to an office. It's less stressful this way, Richard explained over dinner, his voice dripping with false concern. Dr. Winters is very understanding about these situations. He specializes in age-related cognitive issues. I pushed my food around my plate, playing the role of confused, slightly frightened elderly woman. What kind of questions will he ask me? Just simple things. Memory tests, orientation questions. Nothing to worry about. Richard reached across the table and patted my hand. This is all for your own good, Ingrid, so we can get you the help you need. The recording device in my cardigan pocket captured every patronizing word. That night, I lay awake until I heard Richard's breathing deepen into sleep. Then I slipped out of bed, grabbed my laptop, and locked myself in the guest bathroom. The one room in the house where Richard had never installed the security cameras he claimed were just for package theft prevention. I uploaded the day's recordings to Marie Woolsey, along with photographs of every document I'd found. Then I did something I hadn't done in 5 years. I opened Facebook and searched for Henry Hollister, Richard's brother, the one who'd supposedly died in Oregon. The profile that came up showed a man in his late 60s, very much alive, posting photos from what appeared to be a small town in New Mexico. His most recent post from 3 days ago showed him standing in front of a rundown motel. Another year, another fresh start. Some debts finally paid. I screenshot everything and sent it to Marie, then kept digging. Henry's friends list was small, only 43 people, but one name made my heart stop. Melissa Bradford. My daughter was Facebook friends with her supposedly dead uncle. I clicked on the friendship. It had been established 2 years ago, and according to their interaction history, they'd been messaging regularly. The bathroom walls seemed to close in around me. Melissa knew. My own daughter knew that Henry was alive, had been in contact with him, and had said nothing. The forged notary stamp suddenly made perfect, terrible sense. I was still staring at the screen when my phone buzzed with an incoming email from Marie. The subject line read, "Urgent. Call me now." I dialed her number, keeping my voice to a whisper. "Mrs. Hollister, I need you to listen very carefully," Marie said without preamble. "I just received another anonymous tip. This one included bank records showing that Melissa Bradford received a payment of $50,000 from Berkshire Development 3 months ago. The memo line says, 'Consulting fee for property acquisition support.' My daughter had been paid to help steal my home." "There's more," Marie continued. "I tracked down the original anonymous tipster. It took some work, but I managed to trace the encrypted email. Ingrid, it came from your son's IP address. Christopher is the one who contacted me." Christopher, my quiet, often overlooked son, who'd always lived in his sister's shadow, who Richard dismissed as not business-minded enough. "He's known about this for how long?" I asked. "According to the metadata on the files he sent me, he's been gathering evidence for at least 6 weeks. He has access to documents we haven't even seen yet." She paused. "Mrs. Hollister, your son has been trying to protect you, but I think he's in danger now. The people who are orchestrating this, they won't want evidence floating around. What people? Just Richard and Melissa? I don't think so. The operation is too sophisticated. The forged documents, the loan structure, the development deal. This took planning and expertise. Someone's coordinating all of this, and I don't believe it's your husband. I think Richard is as much a victim as you are. The idea seemed absurd. Then why is he trying to have me declared incompetent? Because whoever's pulling the strings convinced him it's the only way out. Ingrid, I need to ask you something, and I need you to think carefully before answering. Is there anything in your past, or Richard's past, that someone could use as leverage? Anything that would make him desperate enough to risk everything? I thought about the emails from Henry. 46 years of lies, brother. Think about that. I don't know, I said slowly. But I think Henry Hollister does, and I think I need to talk to him. Absolutely not, Marie said sharply. If Henry is the blackmailer, confronting him could be dangerous. Then what do you suggest? I sit here and wait for them to take my home and lock me away in some facility? I suggest you fail the cognitive test tomorrow. I blinked. What? Dr. Winters is going to conduct an evaluation designed to make you look impaired. The questions will be confusing, the tasks deliberately difficult. He'll interpret normal mistakes as signs of dementia. But if you're aware that's what he's doing, you can control the narrative. I don't understand. Answer some questions perfectly and others poorly. Be sharp and clear about events from 20 years ago, but vague about what you had for breakfast. Mix in moments of absolute lucidity with moments of apparent confusion. Make it impossible for him to give you a definitive diagnosis. Force them to do more testing, which buys us time. It was brilliant and terrifying in equal measure. You want me to gaslight the gaslighter. I want you to survive long enough for us to figure out who's really behind this. Because Ingrid, I don't think you understand how much danger you're in. Property fraud cases like this, they escalate. If you're declared incompetent, Richard gets full control. And if something were to happen to you after that, she didn't need to finish the sentence. The evaluation is at 9, I said. What should I do until then? Get some sleep if you can. And Ingrid, keep that recorder running. We need documentation of everything. I ended the call and sat on the cold bathroom floor for a long time, thinking about my daughter's betrayal, my son's secret protection, and my husband's desperate lies. Somewhere in the tangle of deception was a truth I couldn't yet see, but I was going to find it. I must have dozed off because I woke to someone knocking on the bathroom door. Ingrid, are you all right in there? Richard's voice edged with suspicion. I looked at my watch, 5:30 a.m. I'd been in the bathroom for over 3 hours. I'm fine, I called out, flushing the toilet for effect. Just an upset stomach. The door's locked. Yes, Richard. That's generally how bathroom doors work. A pause. Why do you have your laptop in there? My blood went cold. He could see the light under the door. I couldn't sleep. I was reading. I cleared my browser history with shaking hands, closed the laptop. I'll be out in a minute. When I opened the door, Richard was standing there in his bathrobe, studying my face with an intensity that made my skin crawl. What were you reading? He asked. Articles about memory loss. I wanted to understand what to expect from the evaluation. Something flickered in his eyes. Guilt? Relief? Ingrid, you don't need to worry. Dr. Winters is very kind. He'll make this as easy as possible. Easy, I repeated. Of course. We stood there in the hallway, two people who'd shared a bed for 46 years, now strangers playing roles in some twisted theater. I'm going to make coffee, Richard said finally. Why don't you get dressed? Wear something comfortable. Doctor, Winters will be here in 3 hours. I watched him descend the stairs, then return to the bedroom. My phone buzzed with a text from Christopher. Mom, I'm parked down the road. If you need me, send an SOS emoji. I'll be there in 2 minutes. My eyes filled with tears. My son, keeping watch through the night. I sent back a heart emoji, then got dressed with care. Not too put together. That might suggest I was faking confusion, but not disheveled either. I needed to look like someone who was trying her best, but losing the battle. At 8:45, a silver Mercedes pulled up the driveway. Dr. Gerald Winters was a distinguished-looking man in his 60s, carrying a leather medical bag that probably cost more than my monthly grocery budget. Richard greeted him like an old friend. "Gerald, thank you for coming on such short notice." "Of course, Richard. You sounded quite concerned on the phone." Dr. Barr. Winters turned to me with a professional smile. "Mrs. Hollister, I'm here to do a simple assessment. Nothing invasive, just some conversation and a few basic tasks. Is that all right with you?" "I suppose so," I said, injecting just a hint of uncertainty into my voice. We settled in the living room. Me on the sofa, Dr. Winters in the armchair across from me, Richard hovering near the doorway like a nervous stage director. "Let's start with some basic orientation questions, Dr. Rye," Winters said, pulling out a clipboard. "Can you tell me what day it is?" "Wednesday," I said clearly. "And the date?" "January 2nd. "Correct." "Who is the current president?" I gave him the name of the president, then added, "Though I didn't vote for him. Richard did." A little editorializing to seem more natural. Dr. Winters made a note. "Good. Now I'm going to give you 3 words, and I want you to remember them. We'll come back to them in a few minutes. The words are apple, table, penny. Can you repeat those back to me?" Apple, table, penny. Excellent. Now can you count backward from 100 by sevens? This was a classic test, designed to assess cognitive function. I pretended to concentrate hard, then said, 100, 93, 86. Keep going. 79? Deliberately wrong. No, wait. 86? 79. Right this time, showing I could self-correct. Dr. Winters made another note. We continued through a series of questions. Some I answered perfectly, others I fumbled just enough to plant doubt. Then he asked, "Mrs. Hollister, can you tell me what you had for breakfast this morning?" I looked at Richard. "Did I have breakfast?" "You had toast and coffee," Richard said quickly, too quickly. "Oh, yes. Toast." I frowned. "Was there jam?" "No, Ingrid, just butter." Dr. Winters's pen moved across his clipboard. "And what about yesterday? Can you tell me what you did yesterday?" This was where Marie's advice became crucial. I could describe yesterday in perfect detail: the surveillance photos, the forged documents, Marie's visit, the emails from Henry. But that would prove I was completely lucid. Instead, I said, "Yesterday was New Year's Day?" "No, that was the day before. Yesterday there was something important. Richard had to go to work." I looked genuinely troubled. "I'm sorry. I'm having trouble remembering. It's all gotten rather confused." "That's all right," Dr. Winters said in that carefully neutral tone doctors use when they've confirmed a diagnosis. "Let's try something else. Can you remember those 3 words I gave you earlier?" "Apple," I said immediately. Then I paused, appearing to struggle. "Apple. And was one of them table? Or was that something else?" "Take your time." "Apple, table. Penny." "Yes, penny." All correct, but delivered with enough hesitation to seem concerning. The evaluation continued for another 30 minutes. Dr. Winters asked me to draw a clock face showing 3:15. I drew it perfectly, then added the numbers slightly out of order, as if I'd gotten distracted partway through. He asked me to name as many animals as I could in 1 minute. I named 17, which was above average, but I included giraffe twice, as if I'd forgotten I'd already said it. Every answer was calculated. Every hesitation planned. Finally, Dr. Winters closed his notebook and stood. "Richard, could I speak with you privately for a moment?" They stepped into the kitchen, but I could hear every word through the open door. "It's inconclusive," Dr. Winters said. "She's showing some concerning signs, short-term memory issues, occasional confusion, but she's also demonstrating strong cognitive abilities in other areas. I can't give you a definitive diagnosis based on one evaluation. But you can see there's a problem," Richard pressed. "I can see there might be early-stage cognitive decline. But Gerald, I need to be honest with you. She's functioning at a level that would make it very difficult to declare her legally incompetent. She'd need much more extensive testing, probably over several weeks." "We don't have weeks!" Richard's voice rose, then quickly lowered. "I mean, isn't there something you can do? Some way to expedite the process? There was a long silence. When Dr. Winters spoke again, his voice was cold. Richard, I'm beginning to wonder if this evaluation is really about your wife's health, or if it's about something else entirely. Gerald, please, I think I should go. Mrs. Hollister, it was nice meeting you, he called into the living room. I'll send my report to your primary care physician. I recommend a full neurological workup at a proper facility. He left before Richard could argue further. I sat very still on the sofa, the recorder capturing my husband's ragged breathing in the kitchen. He'd failed. His quick solution had backfired, which meant he'd be even more desperate now. Richard came back into the living room, his face pale. Well, that's that. Dr. Winters says you need more testing. I'm sorry I'm such a disappointment, I said quietly. He flinched. Ingrid, that's not what I meant. I just want to help you. By having me declared incompetent? By selling our home without my knowledge? By forging my signature on legal documents? The words slipped out before I could stop them. Richard went absolutely still. What did you just say? I met his eyes, and in that moment the pretense fell away. I know about the power of attorney, Richard. I know about the loan. I know about Henry. His face drained of all color. How? Did you really think I wouldn't figure it out? After 46 years, did you think I was that blind? Ingrid, you don't understand. Then explain it to me. Explain why your supposedly dead brother is blackmailing you. Explain why Melissa helped forge my signature. Explain why you're trying to steal my home. It's not like that. Richard stumbled backward, hitting the wall. I was trying to protect you. From what? From the truth. He slid down the wall until he was sitting on the floor, his head in his hands. Oh, Ingrid, the truth is so much worse than you can possibly imagine. I knelt beside him, the recorder still running in my pocket. Then tell me, whatever it is, we face it together. He looked up at me with tears streaming down his face. We can't face this together, because Ingrid, you're not my first wife. The words seemed to come from very far away. What? 46 years ago when I met you, I was already married. Her name was Catherine. We had a daughter. I left them. I created a new identity, moved across the country and started over. With you. He was sobbing now. Henry found out 5 years ago. He tracked down Catherine and my daughter. He told them where I was, what I'd done. And Catherine, she's dying now. Cancer. She has nothing. Our daughter has nothing. Henry said if I didn't pay what I owed them, child support, alimony, 40 years of abandonment, he'd tell you everything. He'd tell the police. I'd go to prison for fraud, for bigamy, for... Our marriage isn't legal, I whispered. No, it never was. Everything we've built, everything we've shared, it's all based on a lie. I stood up slowly, my legs shaking. 46 years, 2 children, a lifetime of memories, all of it built on a foundation of sand. Who else knows? I asked. Melissa? Henry told her first, used her to get to me. She's been helping me try to fix this, to get the money together. That's why she notarized the power of attorney. She thought she was helping save the family. And Christopher? He found out somehow. I don't know how, but he's been threatening to expose everything if I don't come clean. Outside, I could hear a car engine. Through the window, I saw Christopher's vehicle pulling into the driveway, followed closely by a police car. Richard saw them too. Oh no. Ingrid, please, don't let them take me. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but please. The doorbell rang. I looked at my husband. No, not my husband, because he'd never really been my husband, and felt something crack open inside my chest. Not my heart breaking. Something else. Something harder and colder. You're right about one thing, Richard, I said softly. You don't deserve my forgiveness. I walked to the door and opened it. Christopher stood there with 2 police officers and Marie Woolsey. Mom, my son said. Are you all right? Behind me, Richard began to wail, a terrible broken sound, and I realized that the mystery I'd been trying to solve wasn't about stolen property or forged documents or even blackmail. It was about discovering that my entire life had been a lie. And now, standing in the ruins of that lie, I had to decide who I really was. The police officers weren't there to arrest Richard, as I'd initially thought. They were there to serve him with a restraining order. Mr. Hollister, the taller officer said, reading from a document, you are hereby ordered to vacate this property immediately and maintain a distance of no less than 500 feet from Ingrid Hollister. Violation of this order will result in immediate arrest. Richard's face went from pale to ashen. On what grounds? Marie Woolsey stepped forward, holding a folder thick with documents. Elder abuse, coercion, fraud, and attempted theft of property. Mrs. Hollister has filed a formal complaint with the district attorney's office. We have recordings of you attempting to have her falsely declared incompetent, as well as evidence of forged legal documents. Ingrid, you can't do this, Richard pleaded, trying to reach for me. Christopher stepped between us, his jaw set. Don't touch her, my son said quietly. You've done enough. I need to explain. You've had 46 years to explain, I heard myself say. My voice sounded strange, distant, as if someone else were speaking through me. Pack a bag, Richard. You have 15 minutes. He stood there, looking from me to Christopher to the police officers, perhaps waiting for someone to tell him this was all a terrible mistake, that I would forgive him the way I'd forgiven 100 smaller transgressions over the years. But I'd used up all my forgiveness. 15 minutes, the officer repeated. Richard climbed the stairs slowly, each step seeming to age him another year. I didn't watch him go. Instead, I turned to Marie. Is it true? I asked. Everything he said about the marriage being invalid? I'll need to verify the details, but if he was legally married when he married you, then yes, your marriage would be void. However, she held up a hand as I swayed slightly. That doesn't mean you have no rights. Common law marriage, property rights accrued over decades of cohabitation, there are legal avenues. But Ingrid, right now, we need to focus on stopping the property sale. The sale closes in less than 2 weeks, I said. Actually, it doesn't. I filed an emergency injunction this morning. The sale is frozen pending investigation of fraud. Berkshire Development is furious, but their hands are tied. Marie smiled grimly. They can't purchase property that's entangled in a criminal investigation. Christopher touched my arm gently. Mom, why don't you sit down? You've had a shock. But I couldn't sit. Couldn't be still. Because if I stopped moving, I'd have to actually process what I'd just learned. That the man I'd spent 46 years with had another wife, another daughter. That my children, our children, were technically illegitimate. Melissa, I said suddenly. Where is she? Christopher and Marie exchanged a look. Mom, there's something else you need to know, Christopher said carefully. Melissa wasn't just helping Dad because she thought she was protecting the family. She's been working with Berkshire Development for over a year. The $50,000 payment wasn't a one-time consulting fee. It was the first installment. She stands to make another $200,000 when the sale goes through. The betrayal hit me like a physical blow. My own daughter. She convinced herself it was for everyone's good, Christopher continued. That you and Dad were getting old, that managing this property was too much for you, that the money would secure everyone's future. She told me she was doing it out of love. Love, I repeated bitterly. What does she know about love when she's willing to destroy her mother for $250,000? Footsteps on the stairs announced Richard's return. He carried a single suitcase, his face blotchy and swollen from crying. Ingrid, please, can we talk? Just the two of us? No, I said. I know I don't have the right to ask for anything, but there are things you need to understand. Catherine, my first wife, she's dying. Our daughter Serena, she's been taking care of her alone. No money, no support. Henry found them living in poverty while we lived here in comfort. He wasn't wrong to be angry. I abandoned them. I was a coward, and I've spent 40 years running from what I did. And you thought the solution was to steal from me? I asked. To forge my signature? To try to have me declared insane? I thought if I could just pay them what I owed, make things right, we could move forward. Start over somewhere new, where no one knew the truth. You can't make this right, Richard. You can't pay off 40 years of abandonment and lies. The officers moved toward him. Time's up, Mr. Hollister. As they escorted him to the door, Richard turned back one last time. I loved you, Ingrid. That was never a lie. Everything I built with you, That was real. Was it? I asked. Because I can't tell anymore. I don't know what was real and what was just another part of your performance. They led him out to his car. I watched through the window as he drove away, his taillights disappearing down the same driveway where I'd seen him hand that envelope to Stephen Sutton just 36 hours ago. 36 hours. My entire world had collapsed in a day and a half. Mrs. Hollister, Marie said gently, you should know that the district attorney wants to speak with you. They're considering criminal charges against Richard for fraud and forgery. Your testimony will be crucial. What about Melissa? Marie hesitated. That's complicated. She did notarize a document she shouldn't have, but whether that rises to criminal charges depends on what she knew and when she knew it. Right now, she's claiming she believed you had agreed to the power of attorney and simply forgotten about it. She's claiming I have dementia. Yes. I thought about my daughter's texts, her dismissive attitude, the way she'd called Richard to warn him when Marie first came to the house. How long had Melissa been treating me like a confused old woman whose opinions could be disregarded? Christopher, I said, how long have you known about all of this? My son sank into a chair, suddenly looking exhausted. I started suspecting something was wrong about 2 months ago. Dad asked me to witness a document, said it was just routine estate planning. But something felt off about it. So I looked into it. Started going through files when I visited, checking public records. The more I found, the worse it got. Why didn't you tell me? I tried, Mom. Remember when I came over in November and asked if you'd reviewed your will recently? If you'd signed any new documents? You said Dad handled all that you trusted him completely. I realized then that if I told you without proof, you wouldn't believe me. You'd think I was just trying to cause trouble like Melissa always said I did. He was right. 2 months ago, I would have defended Richard against any accusation. I would have chosen my husband over my son's suspicions. I'm sorry, I said, for not listening, for not seeing what you were trying to tell me. You loved him. That's not something to apologize for. Christopher stood and wrapped his arms around me. But Mom, we need to talk about what happens next, because there are a lot of legal complications coming, and we need to prepare. Marie cleared her throat. He's right. Ingrid, I need to ask you some difficult questions. Did you and Richard file joint tax returns? Yes, every year. Do you have a joint bank account? Yes. Property titled in both names? This house, yes. And a cabin in New Hampshire that belonged to Richard's parents. We inherited it years ago. Marie made notes. If Richard was legally married to Catherine when he married you, then technically any property acquired during your relationship could be considered marital property from his first marriage. Catherine and Serena could have legal claims. The room tilted. They could take my home? It's possible. It depends on the laws in the state where Richard and Catherine were married, whether she ever filed for divorce, whether there were any court orders regarding property division. Marie met my eyes. Ingrid, I won't lie to you. This is going to get messy. Very messy. My phone buzzed. A text from Melissa. Mom? Dad just called me crying. What have you done? How could you kick him out? He's your husband. I stared at the message, then typed back. No, he's not. Ask him to explain why. The reply came within seconds. Stop it. I know you're confused right now, but Dad loves you. We're trying to help you, but you keep fighting us. Please, just sign the papers so we can protect your assets before you lose everything. I showed the message to Marie. She still thinks I'm the problem. She knows the truth, Christopher said darkly. She's just choosing to blame you instead of admitting she helped Dad commit fraud. Before I could respond, my phone rang. Unknown number. Don't answer it, Marie warned, but something made me swipe to accept the call. Hello? Mrs. Hollister? A woman's voice, weak and raspy. My name is Catherine. I was Richard's wife, his real wife. I need to talk to you. I sank onto the sofa, my legs suddenly unable to hold me. How did you get this number? Henry gave it to me. I'm sorry to call. I'm sure this is the last thing you want to deal with. But Mrs. Hollister, Ingrid, there are things you need to know about Richard. Things that go beyond just the marriage. I don't think I can handle any more revelations today. I understand. But this can't wait. Because Ingrid, Whatever Henry told Richard, whatever he's been blackmailing him about, it's not the full story. There's something else. Something Henry didn't know about. She coughed, a painful, rattling sound. Richard isn't the man you think he is. He isn't even the man I thought he was. And you're in danger. Real danger. My blood went cold. What kind of danger? I can't explain over the phone, but I have documents, evidence of things Richard did before he left me. Before he became Richard Hollister. Her breathing was labored. That's not even his real name, Ingrid. The man you married. His name is Thomas Bradford. And he's wanted for questioning in connection with a death in Oregon 47 years ago. The room spun. Thomas Bradford. Melissa's married name was Bradford. Had she known? Had she chosen her husband's name? Or had Richard somehow orchestrated that too? What death? I whispered. A business partner. It was ruled an accident at the time, but there were questions. Lots of questions. Thomas, Richard, disappeared 2 weeks after the funeral, changed his name, his identity, everything. I didn't find out until after he'd left me and Serena. By then, I was so broken, so traumatized, I couldn't bring myself to turn him in. I just wanted him gone from our lives. Another cough. But now I'm dying, and I can't leave this world knowing he's out there, free, possibly putting another woman in danger the way he put me in danger. Catherine, what did he do to you? Silence. Then, he tried to kill me. Twice. Made them look like accidents. The second time, I ended up in the hospital for 3 months. That's when he left. Realized I'd survived again and decided to cut his losses. I couldn't breathe. Couldn't think. The man I'd shared a bed with for 46 years had attempted murder. Mrs. Hollister, I'm sending Serena to Vermont. She has all my documents, police reports, medical records, everything. She'll be there tomorrow. Please, listen to what she has to say. And please, her voice dropped to an urgent whisper, be careful. If Richard realizes you know the truth about Oregon, about who he really is, he might decide you're a liability he can't afford. The call ended. I looked up to find Christopher and Marie staring at me. Mom, what did she say? Christopher asked. Before I could answer, the front window exploded inward in a shower of glass. We all dropped to the floor as something heavy crashed onto the living room carpet. Not a bullet, a rock wrapped in paper. Christopher crawled over and grabbed it, unfolding the paper with shaking hands. It's a note, he said. Mom, it's addressed to you. He handed it to me. The message was typed in large, bold letters. Stop asking questions. Sign the papers. Or everyone you love pays the price. Your son drives a blue Honda. License plate KRJ 4729. He takes the same route home every night. Accidents happen. Marie was already on the phone with the police. Christopher had gone pale, his hands trembling as he checked his car keys reflexively. They know where I live, he said. They know my car, my routine. You're staying here tonight, I said firmly. Marie, can the police provide protection? I'll request it, but it takes time to arrange. For now, she pulled out her phone. I'm calling a private security firm I work with. They can have someone here within the hour. Another text from Melissa. Mom, just sign the contract, please, before someone gets hurt. I showed it to Christopher. She knows. She knows about the threats. Or she's part of them, he said bitterly. I thought about my daughter, the little girl who used to climb into my lap and make me read the same bedtime story 5 times in a row. The teenager who'd sobbed on my shoulder when her first boyfriend broke her heart. The woman who'd asked me to be in the delivery room when her twins were born. How had we gotten from there to here? My phone rang again. This time it was Melissa calling directly. Pick up, Marie said. But put it on speaker. We need to hear what she says. I answered. Melissa. Mom, thank goodness. Listen to me. I just heard about what happened with the window. That wasn't us. That wasn't part of the plan. Things are getting out of control. What plan, Melissa? The plan to steal my home? The plan to have me declared incompetent? It's not like that. Her voice was high, panicked. We were trying to protect you. The development company. They don't just want our property. They want the entire valley. And if we don't sell willingly, they're going to make our lives a living nightmare. They have connections, Mom. Political connections, legal connections. They can destroy us. So you decided to destroy me first? I decided to save you. Don't you understand? If we'd fought them, we'd lose everything anyway and get nothing in return. At least this way, we'd all walk away with money. Enough money to start over somewhere safe. Safe from what, Melissa? She was crying now. From them. From Berkshire Development. From Stephen Sutton. Mom, he's not just a CEO. He has ties to organized crime. The properties he acquires, when owners refuse to sell, bad things happen. Accidents. Fires. People disappearing. I thought if we just cooperated, gave them what they wanted, we'd be safe. So you sold out your own mother to criminals. I sold out our property to save our lives. But now you've frozen the sale, filed charges against Dad and Mom. They're furious. Stephen called me an hour ago. He said if the sale doesn't go through, he's going to make sure our entire family regrets it. That's when I realized this was bigger than I thought. Bigger than any of us thought. Marie leaned closer to the phone. Melissa, this is Marie Woolsey, Ingrid's attorney. If what you're saying is true, you need to come in and give a formal statement. We can protect you. No one can protect us from Stephen Sutton, Melissa said. You don't understand who you're dealing with. Then help us understand, I said. Tell us everything you know. I can't. I'm scared, Mom. I'm so scared. Brad doesn't even know the full story. If something happens to me, the twins. Her voice broke. I never wanted this. I just wanted to keep everyone safe. Melissa, where are you right now? I'm home. But Mom, I think someone's watching the house. There's a car parked across the street that's been there for 2 hours. I don't recognize it. Lock your doors, Marie said sharply. Don't let anyone in. I'm sending police to your location right now. No, no police. Stephen said if we involve the police, he'd... She stopped abruptly. Someone's at my door. Mom, I have to go. Melissa, don't open it. The call ended. I looked at Marie, at Christopher, and saw my own terror reflected in their faces. We need to get to her house, I said, already standing. No, Marie said firmly. That's exactly what they'd want, to get you all in one location. Ingrid, we call the police and let them handle it. That's my daughter, and she made her choices, Christopher said quietly. Mom, I know you love her, but Melissa got herself into this. She chose to work with these people, to take their money, to lie to you. We can't save her from the consequences. But I can try to keep her alive, I said. Before anyone could stop me, I grabbed my car keys and headed for the door. Behind me, Marie was shouting into her phone, and Christopher was chasing after me. But all I could think about was Melissa's terrified voice saying someone was at her door. My daughter might have betrayed me. She might have chosen money over family, lies over truth. But she was still my daughter, and I would not let her die for Richard's sins. I was halfway to my car when Christopher caught up with me, keys in his own hand. Then we go together, he said. But Mom, whatever we find at Melissa's house, you need to be prepared. This might not have a happy ending. I know, I said. But I went anyway. Because that's what mothers do. Melissa's house was only 12 minutes from mine, but the drive felt like hours. Christopher kept his car pressed to the speed limit, checking the rearview mirror every few seconds to see if we were being followed. Behind us, Marie's vehicle maintained a careful distance. She'd insisted on coming despite my protests. Call her again, I said. Christopher dialed. No answer. He tried Brad, Melissa's husband. Voicemail. Maybe they're just not answering, Christopher offered weakly. But we both knew better. When we pulled onto Melissa's street, everything looked normal. Suburban houses with neat lawns, cars in driveways, Christmas lights still twinkling even though it was January. The car Melissa had mentioned, a dark SUV, sat across from her house, engine off, windows tinted too dark to see inside. That's them, Christopher said. Marie pulled up behind us as we parked. She got out, phone already pressed to her ear. Police are 3 minutes out, she said. We wait for them. But the front door of Melissa's house was standing open. I was out of the car before Christopher could stop me, running across the frozen lawn toward that open door. Behind me, I heard Marie shouting, heard Christopher's footsteps pounding after me, but I couldn't stop. Melissa, I called out. The interior of the house was dark except for a light in the kitchen. I stepped inside, my heart hammering so hard I could hear it in my ears. "Mom, don't!" Christopher grabbed my arm, pulling me back. "Let me go first." But then we heard it. Crying. A child's crying, coming from upstairs. The twins. I took the stairs two at a time, Christopher right behind me. The crying was coming from their bedroom. I pushed open the door to find both 12-year-olds huddled together on one of the beds, their faces streaked with tears. "Grandma!" They launched themselves at me. "Where's your mother?" I asked, holding them tight. "Where's your father?" "Mom went downstairs with some man," the boy Jason said between sobs. "She told us to stay here and be quiet no matter what we heard." "What did you hear?" "Shouting, and Mom crying. Then it got quiet, and we were too scared to go check." Christopher was already moving toward the door. "Stay here with them, Mom." "No, we go together." "Kids, you're coming with us. Hold my hands." We made our way downstairs as a unit, me in front with both twins gripping my hands, Christopher behind us. Marie had come inside and was standing in the foyer, her face pale. "Kitchen," she mouthed, pointing. The light I'd seen from outside was brighter now. I could hear voices, low, tense, controlled. "Melissa," I called out. "Mom, don't come in here." My daughter's voice, high with panic. "Please, just take the kids and go." But I was already moving through the dining room toward the kitchen. I stopped in the doorway, and the scene before me made my blood freeze. Melissa sat at her kitchen table, her face blotchy from crying. Across from her sat Stephen Sutton, the man from my driveway on New Year's Eve. And standing behind my daughter with his hand on her shoulder in a gesture that was clearly meant to be threatening, stood Richard. No, not Richard. Thomas Bradford. My husband of 46 years looked at me with eyes I'd never seen before. Cold, calculating, empty of anything resembling love or remorse. "Ingrid," he said calmly, "how nice of you to join us. Marie, Christopher, please come in as well. We have a lot to discuss." "Mom, I'm sorry," Melissa sobbed. "I'm so sorry. I didn't know any of this." "Shut up," Richard said, and his hand tightened on her shoulder hard enough to make her wince. Christopher started forward, but Stephen Sutton held up a hand. "I wouldn't. Richard here is quite motivated to ensure this conversation goes his way. Aren't you, Richard? Or should I say Thomas?" So Stephen knew too. Everyone knew except me. "Let my daughter go," I said, proud that my voice didn't shake. "Whatever issues you have, they're with me, not her." "Oh, but that's where you're wrong," Stephen said, leaning back in his chair with the casual confidence of someone who held all the cards. "Melissa is very much part of this. She took my money, she agreed to facilitate the sale, and then she helped you freeze the deal. That's breach of contract. That has consequences." "I didn't help her," Melissa cried. "I tried to stop her." "Not hard enough," Richard said. His voice was different now, harder, with an accent I'd never heard before. All traces of the gentle Vermont consultant were gone. "You let her find out about Catherine. You let Christopher go digging into my past. You were supposed to keep them in line and you failed." "Richard," I said carefully, "what do you want?" He finally looked directly at me. "I want you to sign the papers, Ingrid. The sale contract, the property transfer, all of it. You sign, the deal goes through, Stephen gets his property, I get my money, and everyone walks away intact. And if I refuse?" Stephen Sutton smiled. "Then we make it look like a terrible family tragedy. Elderly woman, confused and paranoid, attacks her own daughter in a delusional episode. Son tries to intervene and gets hurt in the struggle. By the time it's over, you're in a psychiatric facility, your children are dead or traumatized into silence, and Richard here becomes the grieving widower who sadly inherits everything. And then he sells to me anyway." The casual way he described murdering my children made me want to vomit, but I couldn't afford to show fear. Not now. "You'd never get away with it," Marie said from behind me. "The police are already on their way. I've recorded everything you've just said." Stephen glanced at his watch. "Your police are currently responding to a major accident on Route 7, a tractor-trailer jackknifed blocking both lanes. They'll be tied up for at least 30 minutes. As for recordings," he pulled out a small device and pressed a button. Radio frequency jammer. Any electronic recording devices within 50 feet just became useless. But nice try. My hand went to my pocket, where the recorder Marie had given me sat silent and dead. However, Stephen continued, I'm not an unreasonable man. Ingrid, let me make you a counteroffer. You sign the papers, we transfer $2 million into an account in your name alone. Not Richard's, yours. You take that money, move somewhere warm, and live out your remaining years in comfort. Your children are unharmed. Everyone wins. Except I lose my home. Your home is just a building. Your children are irreplaceable. He let that sink in. Unless they're not important to you? I looked at Melissa, still crying at the table. At Christopher, standing protectively near the twins who were clinging to my sides. At Marie, whose professional mask had slipped to reveal genuine fear. If I sign, I said slowly, how do I know you'll honor the agreement? What's to stop you from killing us anyway? Nothing, Stephen admitted, except that dead people create investigations, and investigations are bad for business. If you cooperate, I have no incentive to harm you. If you fight, well, he shrugged, then you become a problem that needs solving. Richard was watching me with an intensity that made my skin crawl. Sign, Ingrid. For once in your life, just do what you're told without arguing. And there it was. The truth behind 46 years of patient manipulation. He'd always seen me as someone to be controlled, managed, told what to do. But he'd never really known me at all. I need to see the papers, I said. Stephen pulled out a folder and slid it across the table. I moved closer, the twins still gripping my hands, and read through the documents. Sale contract, property transfer, power of attorney, all requiring my signature. Do you have a pen? I asked. Richard's face flooded with relief. See? She's being reasonable. I told you she would be. Stephen handed me an expensive fountain pen. I took it, leaned over the papers, and then paused. There's something I need to tell you first, I said. Something Richard should have mentioned. Ingrid, don't, Richard warned. These papers you want me to sign, they're worthless. Because Richard and I were never legally married, which means I have no legal authority to sell this property. It all belongs to him. The room went silent. Stephen turned slowly to Richard. What is she talking about? She's confused. I'm not confused, I interrupted. Richard was already married when he married me. His first wife, Catherine, is still alive. Their marriage was never dissolved, which means our marriage was invalid from the start. Richard is the sole legal owner of the property. Has been all along. You don't need my signature. You never did. Richard's face had gone from relieved to panicked. Ingrid, shut up. Why would he need me to sign anything? I pressed on, looking directly at Stephen. Unless there's something about his legal situation that makes it impossible for him to sell the property himself. Something like, say, being wanted for questioning in a death in Oregon 47 years ago? Stephen stood up slowly. Richard, is this true? No. She's making things up, trying to cause problems. His real name is Thomas Bradford, I said. He faked his death, changed his identity, and started over. But you can't legally sell property when you're technically a dead man, can you? The paper trail would lead right back to Oregon, right back to questions about what really happened to your business partner. Stephen's expression had gone from confident to furious. You told me there were no legal complications. You told me the property was clean. It is clean. She's lying. Am I? I pulled my phone from my pocket. The recorder might not be working, but the phone itself was fine. I'd been smarter than Stephen thought. I'd uploaded Catherine's contact information before we left my house. Now I pulled up the files she'd sent while we were driving. These are police reports from Oregon, 1977. Thomas Bradford, questioned in connection with the death of James Mitchell. Case closed due to insufficient evidence, but Thomas Bradford disappeared 2 weeks later. Never seen again. Until now. I held up the phone, showing a photo of a young Richard, Thomas, standing next to a man who must have been James Mitchell. The resemblance was unmistakable. Stephen snatched the phone from my hand, scrolling through the documents. His face darkened with each page. You've been using a false identity for 47 years, he said to Richard, which means every document you've signed, Every contract you've entered into, every transaction you've made, all of it is legally questionable. I can't complete this purchase. The title wouldn't be clear. My investors would pull out the moment they learned the truth. Stephen, please. You've wasted my time. You've wasted my money. You've made me look like a fool in front of my partners. Stephen's voice was ice. I don't like looking foolish, Thomas. I can fix this. Give me a week. I'll straighten out the paperwork. With what? The $375,000 you borrowed and never paid back? The money that's supposed to be in my account right now? Stephen turned to leave, then paused. I'm done with you. You and your dysfunctional family can keep your property. It's contaminated now anyway. No legitimate buyer will touch it once word gets out. Stephen, wait! Richard lunged after him, but Stephen's driver, a large man who'd apparently been waiting in the SUV, stepped into the doorway, blocking Richard's path. My employer said he's done, the driver said. I suggest you listen. We all stood frozen as Stephen Sutton walked out of Melissa's house and into his SUV. The engine started, and the vehicle pulled away, leaving behind a silence that felt deafening. Richard turned slowly to face me. What have you done? I protected my family, I said simply. Something you should have done 47 years ago. You destroyed everything. That money, I needed that money. Henry will come for me now. Catherine and Serena will come for me. The police in Oregon, if they reopen the case. Then I suggest you hire a good lawyer, Marie said. Because Ingrid's not signing anything. And you're not taking anything else from this family. Richard's face contorted with rage. I spent 46 years providing for you, giving you a home, security, a life, and this is how you repay me? You spent 46 years lying to me, I said quietly. There's a difference. He took a step toward me, and Christopher immediately moved between us. Don't, my son said. Don't even think about it. For a moment, Richard looked like he might try something violent, but then something in him seemed to collapse. He stumbled backward, caught himself against the counter, and slid down to the floor. I was 23 years old, he said, his voice breaking. James and I had a business. We were supposed to be partners. But he cheated me, stole from me, tried to force me out. We argued. He fell, hit his head. It was an accident, but no one would have believed me. So I ran. And Catherine? I asked. I loved her. I really did. But I was so paranoid, so convinced someone would figure out who I really was. I started drinking, getting angry. I didn't mean to hurt her, but he looked up at me with tears streaming down his face. When I met you, I thought I could start over, be better, be the man I should have been all along. But you couldn't, I said, because you were still running, still lying, still Thomas Bradford pretending to be someone else. Police sirens wailed in the distance, getting closer. Marie must have called them again the moment we arrived. Mom, Melissa said, finally finding her voice. I'm so sorry. For everything. I thought I was helping. I thought Dad knew what he was doing. I know, I said. We'll talk about it. Later. When we've all had time to process this. The police arrived. 3 cars, 6 officers, filling Melissa's small house with questions and procedures. Richard was arrested on the outstanding restraining order violation. Marie promised to sort out the complications regarding his identity with the Oregon authorities. As they let him out in handcuffs, Richard looked back at me one last time. Ingrid, I did love you. That was real. I didn't answer. Because I honestly didn't know if anything about him had ever been real. Hours later, after statements had been given and reports filed, I sat in Melissa's kitchen with my children and grandchildren around me. Marie had gone home with promises to call in the morning. The house was quiet except for the twins' soft breathing. They'd finally fallen asleep on the couch, exhausted from the trauma. What happens now? Christopher asked. Now, I said, we figure out who we really are. Without Richard. Without the lies. The property, Melissa said hesitantly. It's still in legal limbo. If Dad's identity is fraudulent, then technically it's a mess. I agreed. But Marie thinks we can untangle it. It'll take time and lawyers and probably more money than I want to think about. But we'll figure it out. Mom, I don't expect forgiveness, Melissa said, her voice small. What I did, helping Dad, taking that money, trying to push you into signing, it's unforgivable. No, I said. It's human. You made mistakes. We all did. I stayed with a man I should have questioned years ago. Christopher kept secrets he should have shared. You believed someone you trusted. We're all guilty of something. But you're the one who fixed it, Christopher said. You're the one who saw through everything and stopped them. I thought about that. About the moment I'd realized how to turn Richard's lies against him. How to make his false identity the weapon that would save us all. I had good teachers, I said. 30 years of 12-year-olds trying to manipulate me taught me a lot about recognizing lies. Melissa laughed. A weak, watery sound, but genuine. You used middle school teacher skills to take down organized crime. I used common sense and the truth, I corrected. Sometimes that's all you need. But even as I said it, I knew we weren't finished. Henry was still out there. Catherine and Serena still had legitimate grievances. The property was still tangled in legal complications. The battle might be won, but the war was far from over. And I was ready for it. Because I'd learned something important in the past 2 days. I was stronger than I'd ever given myself credit for. And I wasn't going to let anyone, not Richard, not Stephen Sutton, not even my own fear, take that away from me. 3 weeks later, I sat in Marie Woolsey's office reviewing the mountain of paperwork that had become my life. Outside, January snow fell softly over Burlington, transforming the city into something clean and new. I wished legal complications could be resolved as easily as snow covering dirt. The good news, Marie said, spreading documents across her desk, is that we've established clear ownership of the property. Since Richard, or Thomas as we should call him, used a false identity to acquire the deed, the property has reverted to its previous legal status, which means it falls under Vermont property and equitable interest provisions. You lived there as a married couple for over 40 years. You're entitled to at least half. And the bad news? Marie's expression tightened. Catherine's attorney has filed a claim for the other half. She argues that as Thomas's legal wife, she has rights to any marital property acquired during their marriage, which technically includes the entire 46 years he was with you. I'd expected this. Catherine had every right to be angry, to want compensation for what Thomas had stolen from her. What does she want? To meet you, in person. That I hadn't expected. She's dying, Marie continued gently. Stage 4 cancer. She has maybe 3 months. Her daughter Serena says Catherine's been carrying this burden for almost 50 years, and she wants closure before she goes. She wants to look you in the eye and tell you her story. And she wants you to hear it. When? Tomorrow, if you're willing. They're staying at a hotel in Burlington. Serena says her mother is too weak to travel much longer. I thought about the woman whose husband I'd unknowingly stolen, whose life had been derailed by Thomas Bradford's lies just as thoroughly as mine had. Tell them I'll be there. That evening, I gathered my family in my kitchen. The same kitchen where this had all begun just 3 weeks ago. Christopher sat at the table with his coffee. Melissa had brought Brad and the twins, though the atmosphere was still strained between us. Time would tell if that would heal. I'm meeting Catherine tomorrow, I announced. Melissa looked up sharply. Mom, is that wise? Her lawyer could be setting a trap, trying to get you to admit something that hurts your case. I'm 68 years old, I said calmly. I've spent the last 46 years living a lie I didn't know I was living. If Catherine wants to tell me the truth, I'm going to listen. Marie will be with me. What about Dad? Christopher asked. Have you heard anything? He's in custody in Oregon. They've reopened the James Mitchell case. His lawyer is arguing it was an accident, that Thomas panicked and ran. They're offering a plea deal, manslaughter instead of murder, given the circumstances and the time elapsed. I paused. I don't know if I hope he takes it or not. Do you still love him? Melissa asked quietly. I considered the question carefully. I love the man I thought he was. But that man never existed. Thomas Bradford created a character named Richard Hollister, and he played that role for 46 years. I fell in love with a performance. I looked at my daughter. So no, I don't love him. I don't even know who he really is. I'm sorry, Mom. Melissa said for perhaps the 100th time since that night. For my part in all of it, I keep thinking about all the ways I should have questioned what was happening. Should have protected you instead of protecting him. You thought you were protecting the family. That's what he told you, and you believed him because daughters want to believe their fathers are good men. I reached across the table and took her hand. We were both fooled, Melissa. The difference is, you recognized it and stopped. That takes courage. Brad cleared his throat. For what it's worth, Ingrid, Melissa's returned the money. All $50,000. She couldn't give it back to Berkshire Development directly. Their lawyers won't accept it without signing releases. So she donated it to a women's shelter for victims of financial abuse. I squeezed Melissa's hand. That's a good choice. It doesn't make up for what I did, she said. No, but it's a start. The twins had been quiet through all of this, but now Jason spoke up. Grandma, are you going to have to move? Everyone at school is talking about our family. About Grandpa being arrested and everything. Let them talk, I said. And no, I'm not moving. That house is my home. I've put 46 years of my life into it. I'm not giving it up without a fight. Even if that lady, Catherine, tries to take it? The other twin, Emma, asked. Even then. But I don't think she will. I think she just wants to be heard. Sometimes that's all people really need. The next morning, Marie and I drove to the Hilton in Burlington. The hotel room where Catherine was staying was on the 3rd floor, with a view of Lake Champlain frozen white in the winter sun. Serena Bradford answered the door, a woman in her late 40s with Thomas's eyes and Catherine's cheekbones. She studied me for a long moment before stepping aside. Mom's in the bedroom. She's having a good day today, alert and clear. I hope... She stopped, started again. I hope you can both find some peace in this. Catherine sat propped against pillows in the bedroom, an oxygen cannula in her nose, her body ravaged by cancer but her eyes sharp and focused. She was beautiful even now, even dying. I could see why Thomas had fallen in love with her. Ingrid Hollister, she said, her voice raspy but strong. Or should I say, Ingrid Bradford, since we're both Mrs. Bradford technically. I pulled a chair close to her bed. Marie and Serena retreated to give us privacy. Call me Ingrid. It's the only name I've ever really known. Thomas told me about you once, Catherine said. About 5 years ago, when Henry first found us and started demanding money. Thomas called me, begging me not to cooperate with Henry's blackmail. He said he'd built a good life, that he had a wife who deserved better than to learn the truth. He cried on the phone, said you were kind and good and that losing you would destroy him. He lost me anyway, I said quietly. Yes. But not before he got 46 years of happiness that should have been mine. There was no bitterness in her voice, just a statement of fact. I want you to understand something, Ingrid. I'm not here to punish you. You're as much a victim as I am. Maybe more, because at least I knew I was married to a monster. You thought you were married to a decent man. Was he always a monster? Catherine considered this. No. When we met, he was charming, ambitious, full of dreams. But there was something dark underneath. A willingness to do whatever it took to get what he wanted. When his business partner threatened to expose some financial irregularities, Thomas saw it as a threat to everything he'd built. They argued. And Thomas... She coughed, a wet, painful sound. Thomas pushed him down a flight of stairs, then watched him die without calling for help. I felt sick. He told me it was an accident. Maybe he believes that now. People rewrite their own histories to make themselves the hero. But I saw him the night it happened. He wasn't scared or guilty. He was calculating, planning his escape even before the body was cold. Catherine reached for my hand with her frail, cold one. He came home that night and told me we were leaving. New city, new names, new life. When I refused, when I said we should go to the police, She didn't finish. She didn't need to. I'm so sorry, I whispered. Don't be sorry for me. Be sorry for yourself. You lost 46 years to a lie. I only lost 5 before he left. You gave him the best years of your life. So did you. Catherine smiled sadly. Yes, but I got something you didn't. I got closure. When he left me, I knew exactly what he was. A coward, a liar, A man who hurt anyone who got in his way. You thought he was faithful, devoted, loving. In some ways, that's worse. We sat in silence for a moment. Two women connected by one man's decades of deception. "I'm not going to fight you for the property," Catherine said finally. "Serena and we've talked about it. We could use the money, certainly. I have medical bills that will bury Serena for years. But taking your home won't bring back the life Thomas stole from us. It'll just steal another life. Yours." Relief flooded through me. "Catherine, I want to help. With the medical bills, with whatever you need." "No." Her grip on my hand tightened. "I didn't tell you this to manipulate you into giving us money. I told you this so you'd know the truth. So you'd understand that what happened to both of us wasn't our fault. We loved the same man. Or at least the man we thought he was. That makes us sisters in a strange sort of way." Tears streamed down my face. "I don't know what to say. Say you'll forgive yourself for not seeing what he really was. Say you'll take whatever time you have left and live it fully, without shame, without regret." Catherine's breathing was labored now. "Say you won't let Thomas Bradford steal one more day of your life." "I won't," I promised. "I won't let him steal anything else from me." Serena knocked softly on the door. "Mom, you need to rest." Catherine released my hand. "One more thing, Ingrid. There's a box. Serena has it. Documents, photos, letters. Everything I saved from my marriage to Thomas. I'm giving them to you. Not for legal reasons, but because you should know the full truth. Who he was before he became Richard Hollister. Maybe it'll help you understand how he could fool you so completely. He'd had practice." Serena brought me a weathered cardboard box. Inside, I could see the edges of photograph albums, legal papers, letters in Thomas's handwriting, but signed with different names. "Thank you," I said to both of them. "For this, for your honesty, for your grace." "Take care of yourself, Ingrid," Catherine said. "And if you ever doubt your own strength, remember, you're the one who survived. You're the one still standing. That makes you stronger than him, stronger than all of them." I left the hotel room carrying the box, Marie walking silently beside me. In the car, I finally let myself cry. For Catherine, for myself, for all the years we'd both lost. "She's remarkable," Marie said quietly. "Yes, she is. So are you, Ingrid. What you've been through these past few weeks, most people would have crumbled. But you fought back. You protected your family. You won. I don't feel like I won. That's because you're still standing in the rubble. But give it time. You'll see." A month later, spring began to hint at its arrival. The snow melted from my property, revealing the garden beds I'd tended for 40 years. Christopher helped me repair the broken window from the rock incident. Melissa came over twice a week, slowly rebuilding trust through consistent presence and genuine remorse. Thomas, I refused to call him Richard anymore, pleaded guilty to involuntary manslaughter in Oregon. 15 years, with possibility of parole in 7. At 70 years old, he'd spend the rest of his functional life in prison. Part of me felt sorry for him. Most of me felt nothing at all. Henry disappeared after Thomas's arrest. The blackmail money had apparently been his endgame. With Thomas in prison and the truth exposed, there was nothing left to extort. I heard through Catherine's lawyer that he'd moved to Mexico. The property deed was officially transferred to my name alone. Marie had worked miracles with the legal complications, arguing that since Thomas had used fraud to acquire everything, his victims, myself and Catherine, should be the ones to benefit. Catherine had signed papers relinquishing her claim, accepting instead a settlement of $200,000 that I insisted on providing. It wasn't nearly enough for what Thomas had taken from her, but she accepted it with grace. On a warm April afternoon, I stood on my porch looking out over the 12 acres that were finally, legally, mine. Christopher had brought his children to visit. Melissa and her family would arrive later for dinner. It would be awkward still. We were all learning how to be a family without the lies, without the manipulation. But we were learning. My phone buzzed. A text from Marie. "Catherine passed away this morning. Peacefully, in her sleep. Serena wanted you to know." I sat down on the porch steps, the phone in my hand. and cried for a woman I'd barely known but felt connected to in ways I couldn't fully explain. 2 women, 2 lives, 1 man's destruction. But Catherine had been right. We'd both survived him. That made us stronger. "Grandma, are you okay?" Emma appeared at my side, concern on her young face. "Yes, sweetheart. I'm okay. Just remembering someone who taught me something important." "What did she teach you?" I thought about Catherine's words, about her strength even in dying, about her refusal to let Thomas take anything more from her. She taught me that the truth, no matter how painful, is always better than the prettiest lie. Emma sat beside me on the steps. "Is that why you don't let us lie, even about little things?" "Yes, because little lies become big lies. And big lies—" I looked out at my property, at the home I'd fought to keep, at the family I'd fought to protect. "Big lies can destroy everything you thought you knew about yourself. But you're not destroyed," Emma observed with the clear-eyed wisdom of 12 years old. "No," I agreed, smiling. "I'm not destroyed. I'm just different than I was. Stronger, maybe. Definitely less trusting. But also more sure of who I am." "Who are you, Grandma?" It was such a simple question. A month ago, I wouldn't have known how to answer. But now, sitting on my porch with my granddaughter beside me and the truth finally laid bare, I knew. "I'm Ingrid Hollister," I said. "Not because that's the name a man gave me, but because that's the life I built. I'm a teacher, a mother, a grandmother. I'm someone who survived 46 years of deception and came out the other side still standing, still fighting, still believing that tomorrow can be better than yesterday." "That's a good answer," Emma said seriously. "Thank you." "I think so too." Christopher called from inside that lunch was ready. Emma jumped up and ran inside, but I sat a moment longer, watching the sunlight filter through the trees I'd planted decades ago, trees that had grown strong and tall despite the lies that had watered them. Catherine had been right. I was still standing, still here, still in my home. And Thomas Bradford, Richard Hollister, whoever he really was, had taken his last thing from me. From this moment forward, every day was mine. Every choice, every breath, every memory I created would be built on truth instead of lies. I stood up, brushed off my jeans, and walked into my house, my legally owned, hard-fought-for, precious house, where my family waited. The mystery was solved. The secrets were exposed. The danger had passed. And I had learned the most important lesson of all, that wisdom, patience, and lived experience could overcome manipulation, threats, and lies. Age wasn't a weakness to be exploited. It was a strength to be wielded. And I was just beginning to understand how powerful I really was. Now tell me, what would you have done if you were in my place? Let me know in the comments. Thank you for watching. And don't forget to check out the video on your screen right now. I'm sure it will surprise you.